All right, in this lesson, I'll introduce two new methods, the upto method and the downto method. They're both called on an integer or a fixed num object. They both accept an argument, and they also take a block. So we're kind of combining a lot of the concepts that we've covered in this section. Again, some of these concepts may be difficult to grasp the first time. Rest assured, we're going to cover them many times over as we proceed through the course. Let's begin with the downto method. I'll begin with a simple number like 5. And 5 as a fixed num includes many methods that we can call in it. We've seen plenty of these already, odd and even and times in the last lesson. Now let's call a method called downto. The downto method accepts an argument, and remember, arguments we give in parentheses. So I'm going to open my parentheses here, and let's say I put 1 here. So this is my argument. So what this is going to do is count down from 5 down to 1. All right? Now, this downto method also accepts a block. As you may recall, the block can be written directly after, and it can be written with either the curly braces or the do and end keywords. Let's do an example of both. Let's say I begin with the curly braces. Here, I'm going to put my vertical pipes. These vertical pipes are going to represent a certain variable, and a temporary variable, and in this case my temporary variable is going to represent the number that I'm currently on. So we're going to begin at 5 and proceed down to 1, so my number is going to be in order 5, 4, 3, 2, and finally 1. That's going to be the value of the temporary variable each loop or each time we begin this process. Each block is the best way to put it. And within the vertical pipes, I can give this number or this variable a name. Again, that name can be anything. A common one you may see is I. I is just a very common single letter variable used in programming for something like a count. And let's just do something very simple. I'm going to do puts, open up my quotes. I'm going to write countdown, colon, and then let's interpolate the value of I within the string. I, of course, is going to be a number in this case. And when I execute this, we're going to get countdown 5, countdown 4, countdown 3, and so on all the way to the end. So my countdown is just a random string that I began. My number here that's being interpolated within the string is coming from this I variable right here that we declared within the block. And this I variable, by the way, is gone as soon as that block is done executing. Not just as a whole, but each block. So I is given a value of 5. It executes the code. It's thrown out. Then I is given a value of 4. It executes this code and then is thrown out. It then gets a value of 3, executes the code, and is thrown out, and so on. And then at the very end, it's the last one, the last value of I, which in this case is 1, is thrown out the window, and I no longer exists. I can prove this by trying to output the value of I after the block, and we're going to get a big red error. Here we go. Undefined local variable or method I. Ruby has no clue what I is because I only existed here within each of these block executions. Let's now attempt this method with the do end keywords instead of the curly braces. I'm going to wipe my slate clean. So now I'm going to repeat my code. I'm still going to do 5. I'm going to call the downto method. That's called on an integer. It accepts an argument, and that argument is what you want to count down to. So let's say this time, let's do 0 now. So again, basically this is just like it would read in English, from 5 down to 0. Okay, from that sequence of numbers, what do I want to do? I tell Ruby what I want to do between my do and my end keywords right here. I put them right after. After do, just like after my curly braces in the first example, I can create a signposts or these vertical pipes to represent my temporary variable. Let's call it current number. Very long variable name, but it is what we're currently representing, just to give you, again, a picture of what it is that we're working with here. And for now, let's just do puts. We are currently on current number. I'm going to interpolate that variable. And then let's just put another line to stay with that do end design of having multiple lines. Hooray! And finally, at the end here, after the entire thing is done, I can just put liftoff. All right, this is just to demonstrate that everything after the end is just going to process normally. So liftoff is outside of my block, so it's only going to print once predictably. Everything in here is going to print a total of 6 times, right? Because we're going to go to 5 and go down to 0 inclusive. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. 6 total times. Let's take a look. There we have it. We can see we are currently on, followed by the current number, which is our temporary variable name that represents what current iteration of this loop we're on. We then have hooray. We repeat this process all the way to the end. This is our final hooray from our block, and then here we have our liftoff coming in from this line of code right here, line 7. Predictably, the complementary method to downto is upto. In fact, if you can pause the video and attempt to do your own example of upto, for example, counting up from 5, let's say to 10, and basically executing exactly what we did here, if you can simply practice the syntax and writing it out, that'd be a really great exercise. And now let me go ahead and just show you the process in action. So this time, I'm going to wipe all my code clean. And otherwise, the structure is exactly the same. Let's say I'm starting at 5. Again, 5 is a totally random number. You could pick any other number here. We're going up to a specific number. That's the argument to this method. Let's say we want to go up to 10. Okay, now I want to tell Ruby what I want to do each time I'm incrementing or moving up this sequence of numbers. So I can either use my curly braces or my do end. Let's do do end this time. If you did curly braces, totally okay. After either my do keyword or my opening curly brace, I put my pipes. That's where I put the name that I want to give my current variable, whatever it represents. Let's say I'm just going to do num for number. That's another common temporary variable name, but you can choose whatever you'd like. And let's say I put we're moving on up. And we are currently on num. Of course, we don't have to actually include a temporary variable. We're totally fine to just output a string like we're moving on up. But then again, there's really no point to having the temporary variable at all if we're not going to use it. So you really only want to include it within those vertical pipes if you intend to use its value. Let me just show you what I mean in a second. First, I'm going to execute this code as is. So you can see we're going to get, we're moving on up. We're currently on 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, exactly what we see right here. If I change this, for example, to 12, then we're going to go from 5 up to 12 right here. If I change my number that the method upto is actually called on to something like 2, then we're going to go from 2 up to 12. Hopefully it's starting to make sense as you start seeing these examples. And of course, as I mentioned, we can take out the num. If I simply didn't want to output it, what I can do is take out this line, take out these vertical pipes, and in this case it's still going to execute it a certain number of times. I think here it's going to be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I think that's a total of 11 times. Let's take a look here. And it's basically going to do the exact same thing. I may have miscounted by 1. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, so 11 total times, 2 to 12. And you can see we've done the same block of code, the put statement of we're moving on up. However, we've not actually utilized the count or the current iteration that we're on. We don't have to, but if we want to include that, we do have to include it in a temporary variable, which we create with those vertical pipes. Those vertical pipes remain identical whether you include them in the curly braces on a single line block or after the do in a multi-line do end block. So hopefully the downto method, the upto method, and the times method that we saw in the previous lesson is giving you a general idea of what a block does. It basically is included right after a method call, and it specifies a little bit of a clarification on how that method is going to work. So here we see that it basically modifies what we're doing a certain number of sequences. When we use it with times, we're always going to start at 0 and then move on up to however many times we ask to. In this case, this downto and upto method allows us to be a little bit more flexible. We can start at a given number and end at a given number as well. So keep practicing with these methods. Practice with some fun exercises. Let's say you want to count down from something like 100 to 0. Maybe you can do something like 99 bottles of beer on the wall. That's a great example of how you can use this exercise. You're simply going to put the current iteration, this number of bottles of beer on the wall, however the rhyme goes, take one down, pass it around, and then the next iteration will be simply one lower. So you can use the downto method to accomplish something like that. That's a great exercise if you want to practice it. But this concludes our numbers and Boolean section of the course. Next up, we're going to focus on strings, which of course we know is just collections of characters or text together. Totally different topic. Hopefully you're ready to move on to something new. We've spent quite a lot of time with numbers, and now we're moving on to strings. So having a lot of fun here learning Ruby, or relearning Ruby in my case. Hope you're having as much fun as I am, and I'll see you in the next section.